Marcus Reeves was 39 years old, a licensed security systems engineer who had spent 14 years designing the kind of infrastructure that made buildings honest, sensors that didn't sleep, cameras that stored everything, systems built on the principle that what happens in a space should always be on record. He was good at it. He was the kind of good that other professionals notice and don't mention to you directly, because they don't want to give you the leverage of knowing your own worth. He came home from a 3-day installation job in Columbus on a Tuesday evening in late April to find the house carrying a particular quality of silence he didn't recognize. Not empty, rearranged, he stood in the kitchen doorway for a moment, reading it the way he read a floor plan, looking for what had been moved, what was missing, what had been put back in a position slightly off from where it belonged. He had no idea that the answer to every question he was about to carry for the next 6 months was already sitting in the cloud storage he had set up the previous October. Every frame, every word, dated, time-stamped, and preserved. What she assumed he would never find turned out to be the one thing he was most qualified to locate. Before we go any further, drop a comment letting us know where in the world you're watching from, and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you won't want to miss. The kitchen light was still on when Marcus set his bag down and started doing the accounting that men do when something is off in a space they know well. His jacket was on the hook by the door, which was normal. Her jacket was not on the adjacent hook, which was not. The 2 glasses that usually sat in the drying rack were put away, both of them. She put things away before company, not before bed. The throw blanket on the couch was folded, edges even, placed on the far arm. He had not folded it that way when he left. He had not folded it at all. He draped it over the back, the way he always did, and she had never once commented on it. He stood in the center of the living room. He looked at the folded blanket. He looked at the kitchen. He looked at the narrow hall that led to the bedroom. He did not go down the hall. He sat on the couch. He picked up the folded blanket, held it in his hands for a moment, and then draped it back over the cushion the way he liked it. She came home 47 minutes later. She said she had been at her sister's. Her voice carried the particular, effortful evenness of someone managing a thing they were not ready to explain. He nodded. He said he was glad to be back. She made tea. They sat together for 20 minutes, and she asked him about the Columbus installation, and he told her, and the whole conversation was accurate and hollow at the same time, and he felt it on both sides and said nothing. He didn't sleep well. He lay in the dark, listening to the house and thinking about the 2 glasses in the cupboard. Marcus Reeves would trace everything back to that Tuesday, not because of what he found out that night, but because of what he chose to check the following morning. He had installed the home system himself. Of course he had. It was the kind of thing he did without announcement, the way a carpenter builds his own bookshelves without considering it worth mentioning. He had put in 4 cameras, front exterior, rear exterior, the garage entry, and 1 in the main living area. A wide-angle unit mounted near the ceiling in the northwest corner of the room, positioned to cover the front door, the kitchen entrance, and the sitting area. He had set it up in October of the previous year, after a neighbor 3 doors down had a package theft issue. He had told Simone about the system. He had shown her the app. She had looked at it briefly and said it was a lot of infrastructure for a residential property, and she had said it lightly, the way she said most things that she considered his particular excess. And then she had not thought about it again. She had not thought about it again. He had set the system to store to a cloud server on a 30-day rolling loop, each day overwriting the oldest footage when the drive approached capacity. The Columbus job had run from Saturday to Tuesday. 3 days. The footage from the previous Friday through Monday was still there, sitting in the archive, exactly where he had built it to sit. He checked it on his laptop at the kitchen table while Simone was in the shower. He moved to Friday first, scanned through it at 4 times speed. Nothing. Saturday morning, her car in the drive. Her leaving at 11, returning at 2:17 in the afternoon. He almost moved on. He didn't move on. He slowed the playback to normal speed at the 2:17 timestamp. She came through the front door. She was not alone. The man who entered behind her was someone Marcus recognized. His name was Derek Ashe. He was 44 years old, a commercial property developer who had been a client of Simone's firm for 2 years. Marcus had met him at a firm dinner in January, a large man with the comfortable bearing of someone accustomed to being the most certain person in a room. He had shaken Marcus's hand that evening with the specific warmth of a man who had already assessed the situation and found it unthreatening. He was in Marcus's living room at 2:17 on a Saturday afternoon. He sat on the couch where Marcus had sat the night before, holding the folded blanket. He leaned back. He looked comfortable. Marcus did not move toward the laptop. He did not close it. He sat at the table with his hands flat on the surface, and he watched the footage for a moment before reaching a decision about what to do with what came next. He kept watching. 3 years before that Tuesday, Marcus had been the kind of husband who kept a running log of things Simone mentioned wanting. Not gifts, but solutions. She had mentioned once in October that the commute was wearing on her, that the drive into the city was eating 45 minutes each way, and she was losing a full working day a week to it. He hadn't said anything at the time. He had spent the following 3 weekends researching remote work infrastructure options for her firm, speaking to 2 consultants on his own, and putting together a 7-page proposal that he left on her desk one Sunday morning without framing it as anything. She had submitted a version of it to her partners in November. They had adopted 2 of the 3 recommendations by January. She hadn't mentioned the proposal again. He hadn't needed her to. The 2nd year of their marriage, Simone's mother had needed a minor surgery, a joint replacement, non-emergency but time-sensitive, that her insurance wouldn't cover until a 6-month waiting period cleared. The amount was $11,400. Marcus had pulled it from his home equity line without discussing it, paid the hospital directly, and told Simone it had been handled. She had cried, briefly. She had said she didn't know how he kept track of everything. He had said it wasn't hard, which was not quite true. But it was the kind of thing he said because the accuracy of the response mattered less than what she needed to hear. He had been, in those years, the load-bearing element in a structure she was choosing not to inspect. A colleague at his firm, a woman named Patrice Gaines, who had worked alongside him for 6 years, who had referred him for the Columbus contract and 3 before it, had said something to him at the end of a long job in February, loading equipment into the transit case, not looking at him directly. You know you could charge twice what you charge, and people would still call you first. He had laughed. She had looked up then. "I'm not making a joke," she said. She zipped the case and lifted it. "You just need to know you're not easy to replace." He had not known what to do with that at the time. He had thanked her and changed the subject. That was the thing Simone had stopped finding worth registering. That the man who handled every structural problem in their life without drama was not going to stay invisible forever. Her name was Patrice Gaines, his colleague, the same one who had given him the reference, the same one who had told him in February what she thought he was worth. She was 58 years old, precise and unimpressible, with 29 years in the security industry behind her, the last 11 of them at Marcus's firm. She had a habit of observing situations completely before saying anything about them, which made her, among other things, someone people trusted with things they weren't ready to tell anyone else. She had called Marcus on the Thursday morning after he returned from Columbus. He hadn't mentioned anything to her. She had opened the conversation with, "I need to tell you something I should have told you 3 months ago." She paused. "I'm going to tell you all of it. I need you to let me finish before you respond." He had sat down. 3 months earlier, in January, Patrice had been at a client dinner at a hotel in Midtown. Simone and Derek Ashe had been in the restaurant bar. Patrice had seen them. She had watched them for 11 minutes from a table across the room before they moved. What she observed in those 11 minutes was not ambiguous. She had gone home, said nothing, spent 3 months trying to determine what kind of news this was to give someone and how to give it. She had a notebook. She had written dates in it, not surveillance, but the kind of careful record a person keeps when they are holding something heavy and want to be certain they're carrying it accurately. She had the notebook with her on the phone call. She read from it. "There's more," she said. She had worked a commercial security installation in late February, a building in Buckhead, standard access control job. She had seen Ashe's name on the tenant list. He occupied the 3rd floor, a full suite. When she cross-referenced the tenant registry with the LLC filings she had pulled out of professional habit, Patrice cross-referenced everything. It was how she was built. She found a business entity registered the previous August, a property management LLC, co-registered to Derek Ashe and to a second party. The second party's name was Simone Reeves. August, 6 weeks before Marcus had installed the home camera system. 8 months before Columbus. Marcus read the date again in his head. He set his phone face down on the table. He picked it up. He said, "What's the entity called?" Patrice told him the name. She told him the address of filing. She told him the registration number. He pulled up the Saturday footage on his other screen while she was still on the line. He found the timestamp at 2:17. He let it run. The living room. The couch. Ashe settling in with the ease of a man who had been in this room before, more than once, and had stopped registering it as someone else's space. Simone sitting across from him, close, her body angled toward him the way it doesn't angle toward strangers. They talked. He couldn't hear it. The cameras ran video only, no audio. But he didn't need audio. What he needed was the timestamp and the address, and he had both. Then, at the 2:49 timestamp, Simone moved to the kitchen. She came back with 2 glasses of water. She sat down beside him on the couch. She said something. Ashe nodded. She said something else. He reached over and took her hand. Marcus watched the gesture. He watched Ashe hold her hand on the couch Marcus had picked out, in the room Marcus had wired, in the house Marcus had spent 3 weekends setting up properly. He looked at everything on the screen, the camera angle, the timestamp, the LLC registration on the other tab, Patrice's notebook entries, the financial filing date. He looked at all of it the way he looked at a building's security architecture before he designed a system for it. Not at any single component. At the structure, how one element connected to the next, how the pieces added up to something someone had intended to conceal. He could see the complete layout. "I need you to send me the notebook," he said. "I'll scan it today," Patrice said. And the LC filing, already pulled it. A pause. "Marcus, are you eating?" "Yes," he said. She said nothing for a moment. "All right." He didn't act immediately. He reviewed the footage across all 4 cameras, all 4 days from Saturday through Tuesday, in a single session that ran from 7 in the morning until 1 in the afternoon. He logged every timestamp of significance in a separate document with precise notation: time, camera, duration, observable activity. He was systematic about it. He had spent 14 years building systems for the purpose of creating inarguable records, and he understood precisely how such a record needed to be constructed to survive scrutiny. He constructed it accordingly. Ashley had been in the house on Saturday for 2 hours and 23 minutes. He had also been in the house on Sunday, arriving at 11:04 in the morning and leaving at 3:52 in the afternoon. Marcus could confirm this from the exterior camera, which caught the vehicle arriving and departing. He could not see into the bedroom from the living area camera, which meant the record held what it held, and he allowed it to hold exactly that, and nothing more. The notebook Patrice scanned was organized by date, time, and location. 6 entries over 3 months. She wrote the way she worked, without drama, without inference, with only what she had directly observed and the specific coordinates of each observation. Marcus read it twice. He printed it. He added it to a folder he had labeled with nothing on the cover. He called an attorney on the following Monday. The attorney's name was Vivienne Cross, a family law specialist with an office on the North Side, referred by a systems client who had used her 2 years prior and described her, simply, as someone who had read every document in his case before she arrived at their first meeting. She called Marcus back at 7:08 the same morning from a number he didn't have in his contacts. She had already looked up the LLC filing. "The co-registration is the issue," she said. She had a voice that moved at the pace of someone who wasted nothing. An LLC formed during the marriage and funded, even partially, by marital assets is a marital asset. If the entity has generated revenue, that revenue is subject to division. I need to know the entity's financials. Marcus sent her the filing number. Within 4 days, she had the operating agreement. Within the operating agreement was a contribution schedule. Simone's initial contribution to the LLC in exchange for her 40% equity stake had been $38,000. The contribution had been made in September of the previous year, 1 month after the LLC's formation. The source was a joint savings account. Marcus had not been consulted. He had not been informed. He had not, until Vivienne read the line to him over the phone, known that $38,000 had left that account. He pulled up the account statement. He confirmed the withdrawal. He looked at the date, September 14th. He had been on a job in Savannah that week. He had been gone for 6 days. He had come home to a clean house and a dinner she had made. And she had asked him about the job, and he had told her. And then he had gone to bed, and the $38,000 had been gone for 9 of the 14 days since its transfer, and he had not noticed once. He added the statement to the folder. He closed it. He put it on the shelf in the closet of his home office, on the far left, behind a row of equipment manuals where no one would look for a folder. "There's one more thing," Vivienne said on their second call. "The camera footage." "Yes," Marcus said. "It was a system you installed for your own property?" "Yes, and your wife was informed of the system's existence?" "I showed her the app in October. She was present when I tested it." A pause. "Not long." "Then it's yours," Vivienne said. "All of it. Don't delete a frame." He wasn't going to delete a frame. He called Simone 2 weeks later. He told her he thought they should resolve things the right way. Sit down, both parties, find something workable. He kept his voice cooperative, unhurried. He did not let any edge into it. She said yes before he had finished proposing the meeting. He could hear something in her agreement. A loosening, like tension that had been held for months, beginning to release. She thought he was coming toward her on this. She thought the meeting was where the harder parts got absorbed. He ended the call. Vivienne was at the kitchen table with her laptop open. "She thinks it's already resolved," Marcus said. Vivienne looked up. She said nothing. She turned back to the screen. Marcus reached the building 11 minutes before anyone was expected. He preferred it that way. The conference room was on the 7th floor of a law office building in Buckhead, 12 blocks from the suite Derek Ashe's name appeared on. Marcus had registered that proximity without particular feeling. He sat at the far end of the table. He put nothing on the surface in front of him. He looked at the city through the window, a clear morning in November, the light hard and exact, the kind of day that didn't allow for impressions. Vivienne arrived at 9:03. She organized documents on her side of the table with the economy of someone who had done this 1,000 times and had stopped thinking of it as preparation and started thinking of it as arrival. Simone came in at 9:14 with an attorney Marcus didn't know, a younger man who held his briefcase in a way that suggested he hadn't fully stopped carrying it as a prop. Simone sat across the table. She looked at Marcus once. Her expression was constructed, composed, almost. She turned her attention to Vivienne, the way people redirect toward the professional in the room when they want to manage the emotional temperature of a conversation. Marcus looked at her. Before any discussion of terms, Vivienne said, "There are several matters of record that require acknowledgement." She placed the first document on the table. She did it without ceremony. This is the operating agreement for a limited liability company registered in the state of Georgia in August of last year. The co-registrants are Derek Ashe and Simone Reeves. She placed a second sheet beside it. This is the contribution schedule from that agreement. The initial contribution of $38,000, attributed to Miss Reeves's equity stake, was withdrawn from a joint marital account on September 14th of last year. She let that sit for a moment. This transaction was not authorized by both account holders. A civil filing has been initiated in connection with this withdrawal. Simone's attorney was already looking at the documents. The composure he had carried into the room had developed a specific quality. He was reading carefully, and careful reading at this stage meant something had been missed in preparation. Vivienne set the third item on the table. It was a printed still frame. Marcus had selected it with precision, the 2:49 timestamp from the Saturday footage, the moment Ashe's hand covered Simone's on the couch. He had not selected it for its emotional content. He had selected it because it was the frame that, combined with the LLC registration date, confirmed the timeline. The image was clear. The timestamp was visible in the corner. The location was identifiable. This is one frame from a security camera system installed on the property in October of last year, Vivienne said. The system was disclosed to both parties at the time of installation. The footage has been preserved in its entirety. This image corresponds to a Saturday in April, 2 days prior to Mr. Reeves' return from a contracted job in Columbus. The full video record is available and will be entered into the record as needed. The room held a particular quality of stillness. Simone had looked at the still frame once. She was now looking at the table surface in front of her. Her hands were beneath the table. Marcus could see her shoulders, the way they had shifted when the document landed. He watched her make the calculation he had known she would have to make. She was running back through every conversation they had ever had about the system, checking it against what she had understood it to capture, finding the place where she had made her error. She had made her error in October. She had looked at the app on the phone for 40 seconds and had decided it was not something that concerned her. He had designed systems his entire career to be exactly what people didn't think about until they needed to. She had simply not accounted for the fact that she was living inside one. "We're not asking for a courtroom proceeding today," Vivienne said. "What we are asking for is a full accounting of the LLC's revenue since registration, a return of the $38,000 contribution drawn from the marital account, and confirmation from all parties that this documentation has been received and is understood. She looked across the table, not at Simone, but at her attorney, with the specific directness of someone communicating between professionals. You'll want time to review with your client. We'll allow for that. Simone's attorney said something quiet to her. She didn't respond. She was still looking at the still frame. 12 seconds of silence. Marcus counted them. He stood. He straightened his jacket. He shook Vivienne's hand. He walked toward the door. He paused. He turned back. He looked at Simone, not across the room, directly, the way he looked at a system diagram when he needed to understand where the failure had originated. The cameras were on the disclosure form, he said. You signed the form when we bought the house. October. The year we moved in. He held her gaze for a moment. I know you forgot. That's the thing about a well-designed system, you don't have to think about it. It just keeps running. He turned and walked out. He did not look back. It didn't resolve in a single month. The LC accounting came first. Vivienne had anticipated that the operating agreement would show early-stage revenue. What the accounting revealed was more developed than early-stage. The LLC had closed 2 small commercial property transactions in the previous 6 months, generating fees. Simone's 40% stake entitled her to $22,400 of that revenue. The civil filing attached to those proceeds, while the marital asset question was adjudicated. Ashley's next transaction, a mid-sized office lease he had been managing for a client, required a clean financial record. The attachment complicated it. The client went with another developer. His reputation in the commercial property market, which ran on references and relationships, absorbed that complication quietly, and then not quietly. The market was smaller than it looked from the outside. Simone's situation at her firm shifted in the way these things shift. Not dramatically, but irreversibly. The partners had not been told about the LLC. They found out the way professional partners find out about things their employees have structured around them, through the filing. One of the partners had known Marcus for 4 years. The knowledge landed the way it landed. It changed how rooms arranged themselves when she walked in. The $38,000 was returned in full within 90 days of the conference room via a settlement drawn against the LLC's revenue account. Vivienne confirmed the transfer on a Thursday morning and forwarded the receipt to Marcus by email with no additional comment. Marcus read the email. He moved it to a folder. He went back to work. He was building something. A contract with a municipal transit authority, access control and camera infrastructure across 11 stations on the South Corridor. It was the largest job he had been sole contracted on in 14 years of work. He had submitted the proposal alone, revised it alone, presented it to the authority's procurement board on a Tuesday morning in March, and received the contract 9 days later in a letter addressed specifically to him. He had 4 technicians working under him. He was bringing in a 5th. He returned every call the same day. He gave installation timelines and hit them exactly. Patrice came on as a secondary contractor for 3 of the 11 stations, and they worked with the efficient shorthand of people who had been solving the same class of problems beside each other for years. On a Friday afternoon in June, walking the 3rd station with her, she said, "You know this is the kind of work people remember you for." He didn't answer right away. He was looking at the camera mount angle on the eastern platform, checking the sight line. He adjusted the bracket by 4 degrees. "I know," he said. He turned and they kept walking. 16 months after the conference room, Marcus moved his company into a proper office, a 2-room suite on the 5th floor of a building in Decatur, with a secure server room he had designed himself, his name on the door. and a filing system organized in a way that only he fully understood, which was precisely the point. He signed the lease on a Wednesday. He installed the interior camera on the same day, a wide-angle unit in the northwest corner of the main room. He tested the system from his phone. The feed came up clean. He checked the timestamp. He checked the storage connection. He labeled the new archive file with the suite address and the date. He put his phone in his pocket and opened the first folder on his new desk. On a Wednesday morning in early January, Marcus arrived at the office before anyone else, which was how he preferred to arrive. The building was quiet, in the way office buildings are quiet, before 7, every sound carrying a little farther than it would later. He made coffee in the small kitchen down the hall and brought it back to his desk. Through the window, the city was beginning its daily process of becoming itself again. A truck on the street below. The lights coming on in the building across from his. One other early arrival, 3 floors up, visible through their window, bent over something at their desk. He opened the Transit Authority's final inspection report and went through it, page by page, checking each station's sign-off against his original specification sheet. 11 stations. Every one cleared. He set the report down. He looked at the office around him, the server room behind the glass partition, the equipment cases stacked in the corner. The camera in the northwest corner, whose steady green light meant the system was recording, logging, storing, exactly as it was designed to do. He picked up his coffee. He drank it. His name was on the door. The system was running. He turned to the next item on the desk and got to work. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've got 2 more picked out that I think you'll really enjoy.